Thank you all for coming. There you go. And wonderful. And especially your... There you go. Very good. Okay. It just goes to show you that I thought there would only be a few people here. Obviously, when I quote a conservative rabbi, everybody comes out. They all want to hear what I have to say. Okay. So, first of all, I have to thank Dr. Roger Hamburg, for being the supplier of all information. He gave me, actually gave Rabbi Linda and me, a package like this. I will show you. And there's only one package that is on my desk. And Roger wanted us to speak about, he didn't tell us, Hollywood and the Nazis. We, on the other hand, saw Conservative Judaism, a Requiem, and we read that and we said, now that's interesting. And Roger did read it because it's underlined. So we assumed that he wanted us to read everything, and it just shows that we do. Okay? We read everything and that people give us, for the most part, and we try to talk about it. Rabbi Daniel Gordis, I need to give an introduction as to who this person is. He was the head of the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, which is the arm of the Jewish Theological Seminary in New York, and they put out conservative rabbis. Okay, that's the school of conservative rabbis. He is the one who is going to make the statement. This is not the Torah Center statement, although it has been, for some reason, thought it to be ours, but this is what he said. Okay, he writes a very long article. And like I said, was the head of the conservative movement at one point. And he says, those who live in the aftermath of the conservative Judaism's demise, he holds it only has 10 more years. Okay?
How many?
10. That's what he says in his article. Will live in an American Judaism diminished and robbed of an important voice. He continues to say, this is not a moment for gloating or for self-congratulation, even within Orthodoxy. And why do you have to say that? Because he said in his article, based upon the Pew Report, that without Orthodox, our intermarriage rate would go from 49% to over 71%. He admits in his article, again, based upon the Pew Report, which you all have on your tables, is that the Orthodox is the growing movement, not the biggest by any stretch of the imagination, but a growing movement simply because we're having children. Okay? It's not growing from outside in, it's growing from inside out. Okay? This is a moment, he continues, this is a moment to begin to ask the question that the Pew study, which we're going to look at, puts squarely in front of us. If, and he insults everybody. He says, conservative is dying in 10 years, dead. Okay, then he says, if orthodoxy is intellectually untenable for many, we'll find out what that means. He means the rigors of orthodoxy, the observance, as Roger likes to call it, 24/7 Jew. Okay? And the liberal Judaism, which is Reform, is utterly incapable for transmitting content and substance. Again, he insults everybody across the board. Okay? Is there no option for Jewish continuity other than Israel, the land of Israel? Go to Israel if you're Jewish. There must be, he cries, those who care about the future of Jewish people have better embark now on the search of what it might be. He does not, in this whole long article, offer anything to tell us what we should do. He merely says, conservative are dead, they're just waiting to be buried. That's all 10 years, and that's it. Reform has absolutely no way to communicate Judaism to anybody, and they're basically going, and what's going to, even though, by the way, they beat, according to the Pew Report, they beat them by a good distance, conservative, and Orthodoxy is just intellectually untenable for people. So really, he leaves no doors open except for the land of Israel, and he says that would be, at most, our hope. I want to look at this Pew study very quickly to show you that according to the Pew study, I'm not sure how many people they questioned, but they went through it and they identified 35 people of the respondents were Reform. By the way, the largest denomination today Let's understand that. It used to be the conservative, but the reform has taken over. Conservative has had a major dive to 18%, which is why he's saying that it's becoming a lost movement. Okay. Orthodox actually took a jump to 10%. It was originally 3%. It went to 10%. Other, six other. I'm not sure what other is, except for Reconstructionist. I'll be quite honest with you. That's the only movement that he didn't talk about. So it must be that other means Reconstructionist. And then 30%, a whopping 30%, according to Pew, I think they're wrong by a long distance, is no denomination. I personally believe, but I have no data to back it up, that the non-denominational is the largest group by a long distance. No way to back it up, but I'm pretty sure if you go into major centers like Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles, not South Bend, even though we're a major center, we're not that big. We have Notre Dame that keeps us religious, as it were, okay? We have, but normally, if you would go out, most people will say they do not belong to a synagogue. They do not go. They don't need organized religion. I've heard that so many times from people who are not, they're only Jewish. They hold it Jewish, but they don't do anything practically about it, okay? There's a lot of people out there, and that's really what all of the shulls, Conservative Reform, Reconstructionists, and Orthodox, always try to get. They're always reaching out. That's what you hear of the outreach. They're never reaching to the other synagogues. We figure those people are taken care of. But they're always trying to reach out. And who do they usually get? People from the other synagogues. And that's why there's competition in the synagogues. Because who am I really, if I open a store in reality, who's going to come? Only somebody who wants what I'm selling. The unaffiliated said, I don't need it anymore. So only the affiliated who care about what they want, if they can get a bar mitzvah, will it be buried, and so on and so forth. They want that, they care about that, so they're going to join. So they become the people that everybody's trying to grab, as it were. That's the only ones who are going for the business. Okay? Now, if you again look at what it means to be Jewish, again, it's right in front of you. And I'm running through it. Remembering the Holocaust was 73%. Leading an ethical and moral life was 69%. That's what makes them Jewish. I want you to remember this is what makes people Jewish in their minds. Okay? Working for justice and equality, otherwise known as social justice. 56%. By the way, that number, 56%, if you will notice, is not only the reform. In other words, reform is 35%. What it means, social justice is running through a whole gamut of people. It's not only representative of the conservative or, that, for that matter, reform. I mean, reform or conservative. Then you have being intellectually curious. That's what Jewish is for some people, and that's 49%. Caring about Israel, you would have thought that this would have been way up. We have AIPAC. I just listened to Jackie Walorski tell us how important Israel is to the United States of America. You would have thought Israel would be up there. Well, it's not. It's 43%. Okay? Having a good sense of humor, just a little bit under Israel at 42%. If you have a good sense of humor, yes, you too can be Jewish. That's what they're saying.
That's why there's so many Jewish comedians.
That's right. If I have a good sense of humor, I must be Jewish. Hollywood. That's Hollywood, okay. Then, being part of a Jewish community. Look how far that is down. 28%. I want to take that back into this equation. We had 35% were saying that they're Reform, 18% Conservative, 10% Orthodox, 6% other. Only 28% say it's important to be part of a Jewish community. Take that 28% and divide that into those numbers, and I think that's really what it is. That's why I say the 30% that they say are unaffiliated, I'm not sure where they're getting that number from, because it doesn't make sense according to what they're saying. If I don't care about joining, if only 28% of the people that they talk to care about being affiliated with Judaism via a building, then there's no way that the other movements can have so many people and unaffiliated not. Only 30%. Say it again? I'm not sure how, I said that from the beginning. Observing Jewish law is way down the list. It's only 19% of the people asked what's important about being Jewish. Only 19% said observing Jewish law. It doesn't mean 24/7. It doesn't mean 1/7. It doesn't mean just observing Jewish law. It could be as simple as going to synagogue 3 times a year. It could be anything. We don't know what it means observing Jewish law. But they held, only 90% said that's what being Jewish is. And finally, Baruch Hashem, for this one, eating traditional Jewish foods. Nothing that we're doing today. Torsten doesn't serve traditional Jewish foods. It only serves what Rabbi Linda wants to eat. Okay. Jewish foods are bagels, cream cheese, lox. Okay? Gefilte fish, matzo balls, which we had on Friday. Sorry? Okay. Shulin, 14% identified by the stomach. Well, gastronomical Jews. Okay? 40% of gastronomical Jews, they say that's Judaism. Yes?
I was watching the Food Channel the other day, and they went to a delicatessen in Los Angeles.
Right.
And they were talking about getting traditional Jewish food there.
Right.
And it was serving what? Corned beef
There you go.
and cheese. I mean,
That's traditional.
yeah,
We like both of those things.
they were making a Reuben sandwich.
Right. Right.
And they said that's traditional Jewish food.
As long as I can sell it, they were talking about, by the way, only the.
But they're telling me what to go of that, you know.
But they're really talking to the crowd that looks like corned beef. Okay, good. Now, I'm going to go very personal here, because without understanding where I come from, you're not going to understand why I believe that Rabbi Daniel Gordis is 1,000% wrong with what he's saying. I don't agree with him. It's Pashut. I just don't agree with him. Okay? But you have to understand where I'm coming from. I grew up in a conservative synagogue. I did not grow up Orthodox. I'm what they call a Baal Tshuva. Okay? I came on my own to Orthodoxy, but that's not the important part of this right now. The fact of the matter is I grew up in a conservative shul. Okay? And I was not like most conservative Jews, because my father, God rest his soul, decided he was going to say Kaddish for his mother and father. Okay? But his mother died very young, so when I was very young, but his father died when I was 10 years old. And I was going to Hebrew school. Now, anybody who's gone to Hebrew school, they can attest to what I'm about to say. We don't go to shul. We go to Hebrew school twice a week, or whatever it's going to be, and we go home and we study for our bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, whatever it's going to be. We do that, we graduate, we say, "Say la vie, loved ya, my money's in my pocket, have a good day." Not to see you again until marriage or never death. Okay? We don't see them. That's why there's a tremendous gap of youth in a conservative and reform world, for that matter. Okay, it's a drain. There's an old joke that there was a rabbi was talking to some priests, and the priest said, "We have a problem with mice." And they said to the rabbi, "Do you have problems?" He said, "No." He said, "Really? How'd you get rid of them?" "We bar mitzvah them." That's it. It's gone. Okay. That's how it was. But my father, like I said, he went to say Kaddish. And when he was saying Kaddish, because our conservative shul, like most, South Bend is different, but like most, they do not have morning services. So the only place he could go to say Kaddish was an Orthodox shul. He and a whole bunch of other people would go every morning, schlep down to the Orthodox shul, and then they would daven at amazing speed. So those who want to experience it come here Sunday morning, and we imitate that. 1.5 hour, in, out, boom. Okay? But that's what it is. That's what they did. And when he went and he saw and listened to the rabbi, and the rabbi knew Midrashim, he knew the Torah, he was very good. And he was so impressed by that. And he said, being an ignorant person himself in Judaism, he said, "I don't want my children to grow up ignorant Jews." Along with my mother, who was also behind that. But my father was living the life as it were. So he said, while he was saying Kaddish, he used to bring me to Minyan, because Minyan was at 8 o'clock at night in the conservative world. Every night was 8 o'clock, and school was over at 8 o'clock. So he said, "We'll wait a little, we'll daven, and I'll say Kaddish, and we'll go home. The problem was, and I'm sure everybody from Sinai and any place that's a small town knows, it's hard to get a minyan, especially when you're only counting men. And that in those days, we're only counting men. So what we had to do is we had to get on the telephone, or the rabbi would have to get on the telephone. And instead of eating at 8:15, which would have been late enough for me, I was a hungry kid at that point, I was eating 8:30, 9 o'clock, because we had to keep calling and getting some schlepper, some unlucky guy who got the telephone to say, okay, I'll come down. And they came down. Okay? It was a very hard thing. But I saw something that was very amazing, that here the people were coming, and they would stand there, the rabbi or whoever would daven, and everybody else would just stand there like this. They didn't know what was going on. Really didn't know. Okay? And I was looking and saying, why does anybody know what's going on? They couldn't read Hebrew. It was a very sad situation. And when their loved one would die, you better believe they would be there every single day for Kaddish. In those days, conservative world was very strong on Kaddish. Today, it's not so. But in those days, and I'm going back to 1970s, I'm saying that. Okay, it was a very strong commitment. And I was seeing that, but the best thing, the absolute best thing of the conservative world were the old timers. These old guys who came from, you're shaking your head, the old guys who came from Europe. Mr. Frank, I remember Mr. Bloom. I remember these people, they were sweet. And I got to know them on a very personal level. It was because I was there every single night. So we got to know each other, and they would tell the stories. It was unbelievable what the treasure that was there, that treasure of being in Europe, coming here, the stories that you never hear. You don't read them in the books. You have to hear it from these people. And their love for Yiddishkeit. And they couldn't understand, where's the youth? So much so that I was part of USY. I never liked USY. I told my father, USY is the United Synagogue Youth. It is the conservative youth group. My brother loved it. My brother was on the religious committee. My sister loved it. She was on some other Michigan committee. I didn't want it. I didn't like it. I said, I just want to be left alone. I was the unaffiliated Jew of the family. I want you to think about that, okay? Isn't that cool? I was a black sheep. I was at shul. It was enough. That was my identity. I didn't want to go to USY. My father said, you have to go. You have to go. Try it. So on and so forth. Fine. A nice young lady called me up. It's hard to get them. Okay? The girl called me up, said, we want you to come to the dinner. And I said, fine, I'll come to the dinner. Okay? Come to dinner with you. So what happened? Here we are. This is a small group. Remember, I'm in a conservative synagogue. Nice big, where they eat. Okay, what was it called that? The back of the shul. It was always the back of the shul. What's it called?
The multi-purpose.
The multi-purpose room, thank you. We're in the back of the shul, and the tables are set. It's beautiful. There's at least 60 people there. At least 60, probably more. At least 40 guys. And the old men, Mr. Bloom and Mr. Frank, came to me, knowing I would do it, said to me, when I was eating, sit down and don't get up. We don't want you to get up today. We're going to ask for minyan, but we don't want you to get up. I think they had a bet going on. I don't know. But here we are. And I said, okay, whatever you want. And they went up to the front of the room, and they said, guys, it's so wonderful you're having a good time here. It's great. We need one more person, one more man to come and make the minyan. Just one. We had our advisor, the Rabbi Kudnicki there. Okay, we had actually two. Okay, and we had, like I said, all these kids. They got up. A clear announcement. Nobody got up. There's not one person that got up. So the old man, Mr. Frank, got up there. Again, you have to hear the Germanic flavor of this voice. He said, please, we just need one person. One person. Somebody saying Kaddish. Can anybody please help? And again, nobody answered. So they came to me and said, okay, let's go. And I said, no problem. I'm out there. I said to my father, I'll never go back again. And Baruch Hashem, I didn't have to at that point. I really didn't like it because it meant nothing to me. What are you doing here? If the old man is coming to you, at least if not the kids, at least the youth director. And I said to my father, what are you sending me to for? I go to shul. It's enough for me. I don't need to do more. Okay? But that was where I was coming from. And to this day, and again, I'll go a little more personal. I have a sister-in-law who's a conservative rabbi. One of my best friends is a conservative rabbi and a reform rabbi. I'm all over the place. I love Jews. I don't care what you are. Doesn't matter to me. So when I sent this thing out, I heard a lot of people who are angry. I'm not sure why they're angry, because I never said the statement. It was rather Rabbi Gordis who said the statement. But now let's go further with that, because I want you to understand the background. Background is very important, because when I was in that conservative synagogue, we viewed all Jews. We saw all Jews. And you know what? The Orthodox, remember, this is what I was being taught. In the school, we were taught Torahs from God. Strange, because that's not the conservative platform. Okay? If you look at a conservative platform or the reform platform, what they'll tell you is that the Torah is written by a series of different authors, and that's it. It's not written by God. 10 Commandments, they say something happened at Sinai, but we don't know what. I'm surprised, and that's, by the way, a very late development of the movement, as Rabbi Lindau will point out many times in his development of the reform platform. Starts off on Pittsburgh platform and up to this very day. Okay, it changes as time goes on, but for the most part, they were willing to say something happened at something happened at Sinai. Not sure what, but they were all saying, breaking off from a major tradition of break-off groups, that the Torah is not from God anymore. Okay, I wasn't taught that. Again, I grew up in a conservative show. I grew up in with a conservative education. I never was taught that. What I was taught was that Orthodox follow every crazy rule in the book. And they're stringent, they're fundamentalists. The Reform, on the other hand, are one step away from Christianity. They just don't believe in Jesus. That was, now again, it wasn't part of the school teaching, but that was the feeling of the people. And finally, the conservative is the right way to be. Okay, because we're in the middle road. We have to deal with it with modernity. That's what I was taught. Again, not in the school, but through the people. Now, again, that's not the differences between the movements. But, amazingly enough, if you go through article after article, and people keep giving me articles, I don't know, as I said to one person, I really don't want to read anymore, but if you, Mr. Arnstein gave me from the St. Louis Jewish Light an article on the rights of non-Orthodox rabbis. Where's the outrage? Because what happened was, in Israel, one of the Orthodox rabbis, Rabbi Avi Weiss, was put under the microscope about his conversions. And the world apparently came down on the Israeli people, or the Israeli rabbinate, so they finally said, yes, we'll accept it. And then, so this conservative rabbi is saying, wait a second, that's very nice for him, but how about us? We're not that different. Again, de-emphasizing the major difference in philosophy. So anybody reading it will say what I was brought up in the conservative world saying, that the only difference between us is observance levels, which is why, by the way, you can get conservadox, which is totally not comprehensible. Either I believe that God's Torah gave me the God, either I believe that God gave me the Torah or I don't. Can't be in the middle. The only way I can be conservadox is that I'm mixing up the observance levels. Okay? As a matter of fact, in my shul, I love my shul because in my shul we called ourselves Reformadox. There you go. We call ourselves Reformadox. Why? Because we went to a conservative synagogue. Our rabbi was an Orthodox guy, and we were Reformed. What simply meant he was more observant than us, but the building was conservative, but we weren't really observant. Like I said, my family was fanatical because we used to stay out on Jewish holidays. That's it. That's what made us fanatical.
You did what on your holidays?
Stayed out of school. Doesn't mean we went, it doesn't mean, what?
Your school was a club?
I went to a public school.
My public school was a club.
No, on Pesach.
No, but for
Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, the rabbi made a war. Okay. But otherwise, for Pesach, for everything else, we were the only ones who stayed out. Nobody else stayed out of school. So people looked up and said, wow, you're the Conservadox. I was thinking, really? Okay, that's cool. Whatever. We weren't kosher. It was unbelievable how people were identifying because of certain things we did. Okay? But that's really what it was. That's how people look at it. So when people look at all these different movements based upon false assumptions, namely one of observance level, that we don't really understand what's going on. We really have no idea of what the different movements stand for. And that's why there can be such a outcry from people when the conservatives say we won't accept reform conversions, or the Orthodox will say we won't. They do say that, by the way. Conservatives do not accept reform conversions. They have to check it out, every single one of them. They do not accept it, but they don't advertise that. But they do not accept it. It's not because of many reasons. And of course, the Orthodox don't accept non-Orthodox conversions. Okay, for various reasons. Okay, but I want to go historically now, because without history, we're not going to understand where the movements came from. Okay, and here we go. In the 1700s, we had something called emancipation. Well, the emancipation came a lot of things. The Jews were in Europe. I'm only picking on European Jews for a reason. The Jews were in Europe. There were pogrom after pogrom after pogrom. We were being killed for being Jews. There was no way that we could survive. What happened was that the Christian world decided to argue with the church. Baruch Hashem. Take the church's power away. Okay? Have the like I said, emancipation, break away. Okay? When that happened, they said, there were movements that came out ultimately, Napoleon amongst them, that said to the Jews, as a Jew, nothing. To the Jews as Frenchmen, everything. You get what's going on? If I'm a Jew and I remain a Jew and I want to be Jewish and I call myself identified as a Jew, you get no rights. If I identify myself as a Frenchman and I take on all the wonderful things of a Frenchman, then I get all the rights in the world. Okay? It's no longer convert and die. It's, do you want rights or do you want to remain in the ghetto? Well, given that sort of a choice, guess what? People chose free choice. And they chose to assimilate and everything else. They were going. They were saying, we're through. We are so tired with this Judaism. We're the chosen. What are we chosen for? Okay, they weren't learned. There was a lot of major ignorance out there. And so what happens? Moses Mendelssohn comes along. Okay? I'm not going to give years because I don't want to get stuck with years. He comes along and he says, based upon using biblical scholarship, which was invented, well, made famous by Wellhausen, who was an anti-Semite, trying to disprove our Torah as being authentic. What he forgot was that by disproving our Torah, which is his Torah was based upon Christian scriptures are based upon us, by dismantling us, he dismantles his own. Anti-Semites don't think. Okay. But what he did was he used that. And beautiful thing about biblical scholarship is they use two methodologies. One is lower criticism. The other one is higher criticism. What is lower criticism? Lower criticism means I look at the text, within the text, and I see the words that are similar and ideas that are similar, and I put them together. By the way, that's also a rabbinic way of learning Torah. Then they also use higher criticism. Higher criticism means that I go outside and I bring information from the outside, archaeology, science, so on and so forth, to explain the Torah. Guess what? Jewish people do that too. It's in the Talmud constantly. Okay, we use the outside sources to prove points in the Torah. It's an amazing thing. So Wellhausen, using it to disprove Torah, okay, Mendelssohn comes and says to the Jewish people who are assimilating, we too can learn Torah like them. We can use all that stuff. And you know what? So you won't wear the frock. You stand up. No. Right. We won't dress like this. We won't dress like that. Shave. Look normal. And don't speak Yiddish. It's a gutter language. Speak German, Deutsch und über alles. Over everything. Speak that way, and you will be accepted into the groups. Mendelssohn was accepted into his groups. They called him the little Jewish hunchback. Did I miss something? Jewish hunchback? He thought he was accepted. Okay. But that's what he was pushing. He was trying to save Jews. You talk about kiruv. You talk about reaching out to the unaffiliated. He was one of the first. Where were the Orthodox who come to that? But he was trying to reach out. And he went for them and he tried to get them. Well, the problem with what he was doing was, by dismantling the Torah, by using biblical scholarship from Wellhausen, and making a shave, take away some of the things, and saying we don't no longer need to follow certain things in Jewish law, rather we just need the ethics. Sadly, all his children intermarried, and actually not intermarried, they became Christians. Halavai should have intermarried. Okay. But they all became Christians. Felix Mendelssohn is from him. He was a good Christian boy. Okay. So his children didn't make it, but the idea did. The idea was catching on because people were saying, this is great. Wow, I can do this and this. I don't have to follow, put the film on. I don't have to do this. I can be a good Jew. Great, I'll identify with that. What happens is Hirsch comes along and says, no. Some don't follow Hirsch. The beginning of neo-Orthodoxy. He says, no, modern Orthodoxy. He says, no, that's not good. What you have to do is we have to follow the Torah, but we should speak German. And we should educate ourselves. And he had a great project. Torah im Derech Eretz. Torah with worldly occupation. What he did was he preached that we have to learn science. Learn science. Yeshiva University is built on this. You learn science, all the arts, everything else. And on top of that, you also have to be very fluent in our tradition. And so much so that you become independent. You're an independent learner. I talked about it on Friday. He got it from the menorah where the high priest has to light the candle, the menorah, until it's lit on its own. He said the same way the rabbis and teachers, you have to educate the students until they can go on their own and light other people's fires. That's what we need. We need an educated populace. He was very successful in Frankfurt and other places, but still, it didn't spread as much as Reform, because Reform, the people were living an assimilated life. They didn't want to have to deal with this. When you're going out with your boss, you want to go to eat your ham sandwich, or at least go to a non-kosher restaurant. You want that. It makes it easier.
What year?
You're saying what year for these guys? Okay, wait a second. I prepared for you. Okay. Moses Mendel was 1776 was the around there was the revolution. So that was emancipation. 1783 was Moses Mendelssohn, and then Hirsch is coming in 1840. Okay, it's different times. Okay, so but he's developing that, and like I said, it's catching on. They're having a fight back and forth. He was avidly against reform because he said you're going too far. No good. It's not going to get the people. You're not saving people by this. He didn't indict Mendelssohn. It wasn't worth indicting Mendelssohn. What he was doing was indicting the movement, saying the movement isn't going to do what you want it to do. Okay? So much so that this is important, the date, 1886, not that long later, 1886, at the Reform they were ordaining their rabbis, so they had this ordination and they served treif food at that banquet. That caused a problem. Right, Pittsburgh. That caused a problem because the rabbis who were there said, this is no good. The fact that we said you don't need to eat kosher, the fact that that's not for us, that's for them. We can't publicly do this, and thus you have the break-off, the conservative movement. We don't get credit for that. They're not the middle ground. Okay? We get credit for, the Orthodox, I'll be very close about it. We, the Orthodox, get credit for the Reform. Reform was a reaction to Orthodoxy. Conservative was a reaction to Reform, going too far. Okay? And so they said, we have to bring back tradition. you can't go out and you can't say we can have treif. You have to say we have to have kosher. So they said we have to follow a halachic response. We have to follow it. Their problem again was they never rejected the original thing that the Reform said about the Torah. They agreed that the Torah was not written by God. That never changed. Okay. In 1922, once again we have another break-off, this time from conservative. So it went, remember how we're doing. Orthodox to Reform. Reform has two offshoots. The first one being conservative, and the next one being, which doesn't catch on, America for the most part, Reconstructionist. Mordechai Kaplan. Mordechai Kaplan went so far as to say that the God is not omniscient, omnipotent, and so on and so forth. He goes on, but what his beautiful thing to say was that we have to have chaburot. We have to learn together, again, an educated populace. Each one of these gentlemen, or people, groups, are trying to save Judaism. They see a problem. They went for it. They took their gusto and they said, we have to put our all effort into it. Because one thing, which I didn't say, starting this all off, is when we came to who came first? The rabbis or the congregants? The congregants. This is the wild west of Judaism. You guys came first. We're running to catch up with you. And that doesn't work. That's why it says in the Talmud that the leaders will have faces of dogs in the Messianic times. What does that mean? Just like a dog. How does a dog do it? A dog walks ahead of the master, and when it comes to a corner, it looks around and says, where do you want to go now? Also the rabbis. They were running, and they were the leaders were the leaders. Where's the board want to go? That's not the way to run the show. Okay? So, in the conservative world, we have, still, I assume, religious committees. Yes? Anybody? Good. Yeah, religious committees. What does that mean? A religious committee means that the rabbi is the guide, as it were. At least in my show. The rabbi was the guide. And what he did was he presented the argument to the board, to the religious board, and the board got, by vote, would decide whether or not they're going to include women, whether or not they're going to give aliyot, whether or not they're going to take the mechitz away. Everything was board, but you had to educate them, okay? It took the power away, voluntarily I guess, from the rabbi himself. The rabbi, unlike in the Orthodox world, the Orthodox world, the rabbi still is the Morda'atra, the one who makes the rule. And as one of the my congregants once said to me when I was in New Brunswick, Canada, it was my first job, and it was a tremendous learning experience. He said to me, it was during Yizkor, and I didn't walk out. Baruch Hashem, my parents were alive at that point, and he said, Rabbi, isn't it the custom that if your parents are alive, you shouldn't stay in? I said, well, it's true, but the vice president told me I have to stay in. He said, Rabbi, you are the leader of this congregation. You make the decisions, not the vice president. There's the president talking. Okay? So I said, really? I make the decisions? He said, absolutely. Whatever you say is the law. But understand something, Rabbi. You may have empty pews. Okay? So within the Orthodox world, we think we're the Morda'atra. We think we run the place. But really, it's the congregants who still tell us if we should have a no shush zone or whatever else is today. Okay? It's still run that way. But that's really what happened. Because we were not like Europe, old day Europe, where the rabbis, clergy were in charge, we ran into this headache of having to run and try to figure out how to get everybody back. So all these gentlemen and all these leaders of these movements were really trying to do something good. There's nothing wrong with what they're trying to do. Like I said, their approach to Torah is what killed it. But really, pick a mitzvah, social justice, whatever you want to pick, get the people involved. That was the right thing to do. It was absolutely correct for America. We needed that. Otherwise, we'd be totally lost. Okay? You needed these different shows because people had to know that they could go and feel comfortable wherever they're going to go. Who wants to come to a shul where they tell you can't have an aliyah because you drive on Shabbos? You don't want to go to that. So you decide to go another one. And if there's going to be a shul that talks to you, you're going to go. But again, you're not going because of theological reasons. You're going because there's kids in that shul, the Hebrew school's better, the rabbi has a nice speaking style, the cantor, ooh, wow, how can you know that cantor? Sort of thing. It was never built upon, we have a theological issue here. Okay? In the Orthodox, again, the old style Orthodox was the same problem, which is why in Bangor, Maine, where I was a rabbi for 7 years, there was no problem for my congregants to go across the street, literally across the street, to the Conservative, and for the Conservative to have no problem except for the militant on either side to not want to come to us when we needed a minyan. So much so, I remember the story, and I'll give it over just to prove the militancy. There was a woman who was at the shul. There was a woman and a rabbi. That's all it was in the Conservative shul. Okay? We needed one person. We never one man. The rabbi would have come. No problem. The rabbi would come. He's come on many occasions. And I said to the young lady, I said, no, I never speak at this point to the service, but I understand what's going on here. So I have to tell you something. You always said that you want to be part of the minyan. Ma'am, if you come across the street, you will make the minyan. You, not him. You'll make the minyan because you'll allow him to come. And then you can say Kaddish, people in my shul can say Kaddish, and we'll have a minyan, and we'll have a minyan. But the town can say they had a minyan. If you do not come, then you have a minyan because you only have 2, and there's 8 people aren't coming down the street. I can guarantee you that. You'll have more if you're lucky. And we can all have a minyan. What do you say? She said, I hear what you're saying. I have compassion for saying, I can't go. I said, don't you understand? I'm making you the 10th. And give you what you want. She said, no, I can't go. Just can't go. I can't bring myself to the street. By the way, I got the minyan because I said, you're across the street with me. That was the end of that. But that was militancy. It was beyond the ken. I was saying, you want to say Kaddish? You can't say Kaddish. By the way, I found out why didn't she leave? Because in that shul, I don't know if it's anywhere else, they said Kaddish even with 1. So she could still say Kaddish and feel good for herself. But it was so amazing to me that you wouldn't come to make a minyan. But that's, like I said, there was militancy on everybody's side of the old style. It wasn't theological. If it was theological, I would have understood it, by the way. I have no problem with the theological difference. When the Reform rabbi said to me, he cannot come to make a minyan because he doesn't hold by what we believe. I said to him, Rabbi, I respect that. I respect it. No problem. And he didn't even come when his congregant was saying Kaddish in my shul. He would not come. I said, it's fine. I hear. You don't agree with what I say. You hold I'm wrong. So fine. That's fear of ball. But if somebody doesn't believe that, they don't come it's not there for theological reasons, then I had a problem with that. But that, like I said, that's how people would go back and forth because people really didn't know the theological differences. Okay? So now, when I was learning in Bangor, and this illustrates the point even more, my friend, the conservative rabbi, who I'll leave nameless at this point because I was told I have to be careful names already. So when it comes to, he said, him and the Reform rabbi, we used to learn on a daily basis, and he came up with a brilliant statement. He said there are only Orthodox, Reform, Reconstructionists, and Conservative rabbis. He said everybody else, they don't know. And it was a brilliant, it was like, wow, you know what, you're right. Most people do not know the differences between the various movements. The rabbis do. Again, we study these things. We know, we go to school for this. But the others, most people don't hear the difference. So that goes first to. Now, I want to say something that really is going to shock people. My wife and I have argued about this at a Shabbos table in front of Ruth. Okay? In front of Ruth. In front of Cindy. She was there too. You both were there for this argument. Because I told Jim, I tell everybody, really, everybody is an Orthodox Jew in thought. Not in observance. I'm not going to put you there. But you all are Orthodox Jews in thought. And I'm going to prove it to you. That's a bold statement for me, right? My wife will yell at me when I go home. Bold statement, but I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Where does the Torah come from? What will people answer you? God gave to Moses Sinai. How do you know that? We saw Charlton Heston get it. Cecil B. DeMille did his job. He convinced every single person out there, Christian, Jew alike, that God gave us the Torah at Sinai. Okay, number 2, something important to think about. Whoever had a boy, did you give a Brit Milah to him? The odds are yes. Did you do it on the 8th day? The odds are yes. And did you do it with a Moel? The odds are yes. Okay? Why in God's name would you allow for genital, what's it called? Mutilation. That's genital mutilation on an 8-day-old child. What kind of chutzpah, what kind of cruelty do you have if you don't believe that's from God? Okay? You obviously do. Another thing you have to ask yourself is, do you believe that Jews should marry Jews? If you do, and only Jews, if you believe like me that God gave us the Torah and God told us that we have to marry Jews and therefore so I'm going to fight with God, fine. On the other hand, if you say that God didn't write the Torah, then guess what? You are a racist. You are a racist. How dare you say that I can only marry a Jew? Why can't I marry a non-Jew? It's better for my gene pool, for crying out loud, if I marry a non-Jew. So why shouldn't I marry? The only reason we say you should marry a Jew is that you believe that God gives the Torah and it's applicable to us. That's it. There's no other reason. And finally, the question that gets to everybody is, do you believe that Israel is the, not a, like the president called it, the Jewish state? Do you believe that Israel is the place that Jews